This is Sales Players, and I'm your host, Jesse Woodbury. I've spent my career selling for early stage companies, and now I'm on a mission to help reps and operators find tips, strategies, and resources for generating more pipeline, closing more deals, and building wealth in tech sales. To learn more, visit salesplayers.co. All right. Hey, Sales Players. Welcome to another episode of the show here. We've got a fantastic guest, Sai. And Sai, you can say your full name so that listeners can find you on socials.
Awesome. Yeah, my full name is Sriharsha.
Sriharsha.
But most people call me Sai. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, and Sai is the co-founder of Hyperbound AI.
Yes. Absolutely.
All right, we're talking to the right one. Well, good deal. I think a good starting point for listeners just to better understand who you are and your background is tell us a little bit about how you started your career. Tell us what brought you to the world of sales tech and sales AI.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me, Jesse. Appreciate it. And this is a long time coming, so I'm happy to be on here. A little bit about myself. I'm a conversational AI engineer by background. So for those of you that don't know what a conversational AI engineer does, essentially it's very similar to what you'd expect. I basically spent the last decade along with my co-founder building these AI models, right? Getting them to be as realistic and human-like as possible. And, about at the end of, 2023 in November, December time, this technology really had an inflection point, right? To the point where, it got hyper real. And, that's when everyone started talking about ChatGPT and, they started trying to explore how this could be the next big revolution. Right. And lucky for us, we were already working on a different product at the time.
Nice.
And somehow fell into this product space by accident. And I'm happy to share a little bit more of that story as we go along here. But, it's been quite the journey over the last 18 months building this product. We launched originally in January 2024. I'm excited to chat.
Yeah, tell us how you stumbled then into sales as the category, because I think there's so many use cases for AI.
Yeah.
But I do think sales is a very powerful one because it always maps back to, how do you make sales reps more productive? How can you double or triple or, 10x their output in many cases? And how do you turn, your frontline reps into a, force multiplier for your business? So yeah, tell us how you stumbled into sales as a specific category.
Yeah. It's interesting because it just happened by accident, really. So I'm an engineer by trade, like I mentioned, and when we first started this company, my co-founder and I actually had 17 different ideas, Jesse. Right? This was actually June 2023 when we first got into Y Combinator. And, it took us nearly 6 months to land on an idea that that was actually taking off. And, that process of validating those 17 ideas, my co-founder and I actually reached out to nearly 25,000 people, just cold LinkedIn messages. We cold emailed nearly 10,000 people, all handwritten, by the way, like 0 outbound sequences that were automated. It was just all done by my co-founder and I. And I think along that process, we realized like, damn, writing emails and these LinkedIn messages, this sucks. like having to do this all day long. Like, I just can't imagine, doing this. And I know that salespeople, they do, especially like the SDRs, right? A big portion of their time is spent doing things like that. And so naturally, we started building this product that helped us send these emails and messages in the first place. So basically, it was like almost like the modern day AI SDR, although we didn't call it that back then. Essentially, it would write, automated emails, personalized at scale. Yeah. And we started using our own product. And so we sold that for nearly 6 months. We went from 0 to 250K in ARR while doing so. And eventually, to sell that product, we built a side hustle that was basically helping us, prepare for all of these sales calls that we were jumping on, because we had no idea how to do discovery, no idea how to run a demo, no idea how to negotiate, right? So we did what technical founders do. We built a side project that would basically help us prep for those calls. And so we were at a conference in New York, I remember around November 2023, and we were at a roundtable with some CROs, and one of them turned to my co-founder and was like, you guys said you guys are engineers, and in a matter of just a couple months, you guys have 250K in ARR and all these customers. Like, how do you guys learn to sell so quickly? And I was like, well, dang, yeah. That's interesting. And he's like, it takes it takes my reps 3 months to close their first deal, and you guys have multiple customers already. Like, how is that possible? And we're like, well, we built this other tool that we practice on, but it's not a big deal. We started downplaying it. And he was like, no, that's a big deal. Like, I want to see what you guys built. And so we show him that product, and he was just mind blown, right? My co-founder and I, we've been building stuff for over a decade now, Jesse, and nothing blew, someone's mind like this product did. And over the course of the rest of the week, we booked a couple more coffee chats with these CROs. And literally every person we showed it to, same reaction, blew their minds. And they were like, why aren't you selling that? Like, all this AI SDR, this email personalization is great and all, but I want that, right? And so we did a hard pivot, started building that new idea, launched it January 2024, and the rest is history. Just took off and went viral. Pretty much, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, name your channel. It just went completely viral.
I always love stories like this. It reminds me a lot of, and I'm sure you're well aware or well familiar with this story, which is that of Basecamp, the tool. Because if I remember right, it was Jason Fried, I think is his name, and then DHH, who's like the guy who invented Ruby. They were running some sort of digital agency, and they built Basecamp as like their skunkworks inside the company just to manage their own clients and process. And then what they realized was like, holy cow, we could actually sell Basecamp as a SaaS because people want this. And I don't know if it's actually a SaaS, or I think it's like an on-prem system, but I always thought that was so cool. And I love hearing stories about scratching your own itch, or you first are solving your own business problem internally. And then it's like, wait, this is actually the thing. So I think that's really cool. And it's also incredibly impressive to hear that you scaled up so quickly, because I totally agree that, typically when you're coming into a startup in a sales role, it's going to take, 9 months, 12 months in some cases, especially if you're going after an enterprise, to get traction, to get your first signature. And then usually those are really small contracts and you have to scale those up. So it's pretty impressive that y'all picked up the selling motion really quickly. And it's a testament to what you've built here. So that's, I love the story.
Yeah. I always say, like, we're the first case study for our own product. And I think that's what helped us sell it, especially for the first couple of months when you don't have any customers and you're just, trying to get those first few clients. It's great to be able to have our own success story and be able to talk about the impact that it's had on us. Yeah. The proof is in the pudding, right? When these people jump on these calls and they engage with us and they see the professionalism and they see how we run discovery, like when you sell to salespeople, there's respect, right? There's mutual respect. They know and they appreciate it. And so, it's not just me saying that we got better and this AI helped us, but the proof is actually in the pudding. Like I'm selling to you right now and you're watching me. So
I love it. So tell us a little bit about maybe some of the first some of the traction you got initially. It sounds like you were blasting out emails to people. I'm sure you were calling people. It sounds like, when did you start to see, people falling in line and getting time on your calendar? What was the tipping point?
Yeah. It's interesting because the day we launched, this was January 23rd, 2024. The initial excitement was there, but it wasn't like at a scale where it was as crazy as we thought. Well, let me reframe it this way. We did not realize how crazy this was going to go viral when we first launched it. Right. And so when we put out the first post, right, nothing really happened for the first 10 hours. And, literally in the middle of the night, I remember this moment very vividly. Like I woke up at 4 a.m. because my phone was buzzing right next to me over and over again. And I look at my phone and turns out our server is down, right, for our website. And I'm like, what the heck? Like, why is the server down? And I call up my co-founder and I'm like, hey, dude, it's 4 a.m. So first of all, I had to call him 10 times for him to wake up. I call him. I'm like, dude, the server is down. Like, we got to fix this. Like, I don't know what's up. And then I go onto LinkedIn and it just went viral, right? Like we're talking multiple influencers posting about us. Like I opened TikTok. There's people posting about us on TikTok and Instagram. And, so many people were using the product that we hadn't even scaled it to that point. And so it literally just crashed, right? And so, and also I still remember 2 weeks in, one of the largest players in that whole category in the conversational intelligence space actually reached out to us with a very kind note and said, "We will crush you. Quit while you're ahead."
Oh, no way.
Yeah. And so I think that was another moment where we really felt like, okay, we're on to something
Yeah.
here. Let's keep going. And about a week after we received that message, we got our first client. That was a small 20K contract, right? And once you get your first customer, things just start rolling, right? And you have success stories and whatnot.
That is some definite signals in the market when you've got a competitor who's suddenly reaching out and they see you on their
This is
radar.
2 weeks after launch.
That's so crazy. What do you
Yeah.
think led to the sort of virality of the brand and the product? It sounds like you had a couple of influencers on board and some people that posted about it on social. Was there anything you did to engineer that?
Yeah. No, it's a great question. It wasn't really engineered in any way, but the one thing that we did do really well was because we were already building a sales related product before this, we had been talking to a lot of people and built out, like, over the course of 6 months, we built out a pretty deep network in sales, right? Like I was already connected with a couple influencers. We had some customers using our former product. And so, I just went back to those same people during launch time and I was like, hey, like, we're launching, like, would appreciate just like some engagement, give it a like, give it a comment, that type of thing. Right. But it wasn't even those people that actually made things go viral, interestingly enough. It was just total strangers, like influencers I'd never heard of. Right. There were some people also that I did look up to. I had outbounded them so many times, they never actually responded, that actually found our product and just posted about it and had no idea I was the guy that built it either. And so, yeah, it's like, it's one of those moments that like really is like life changing. And we're thankful for how far it's gotten us so far.
Yeah. What are some of the things you're hearing? This is actually, almost a personal selfish question because I also sell an AI product by day. And one of the things that I've been encountering, and I sell to a different category than sales, I sell to the customer support center. But one of the things I'm hearing a lot is like, we're worried about investing in this because we're worried the market's moving so fast that this could be outdated in 12 or 18 or 24 months.
Yeah.
And also there's lots of red tape because before we can deploy AI in something, we have to make sure that, it's pulling from models that aren't going to screw up our business in some way, or they're not going to, we're not going to message something to a customer using AI that's going to put us in timeout, right? Or there's been some examples in the media recently of brands where they had AI deployed on their chat or something and it made up some policy or this or that. What kind of objections do you get from revenue professionals and sales professionals around AI?
So I've definitely heard that sentiment before, right? Where people are playing the wait and see game, right? Yeah. Essentially, they're just scared of making an investment in something because they don't want to make the wrong choice, right? They want to make sure they have the best tool possible and they're waiting it out. And what I usually say to those people is, by you waiting, you're already falling behind. Right. In fact, the fact that we're even having this conversation about whether you should use AI or not, there's someone out there already buying it and implementing it right now and getting ahead of you, right? Yeah. So that's one thing to keep in mind, right? And the other thing that I think a lot of people aren't realizing is you can't just take AI and just put it into a process and hope it works. Yeah. Right? You really have to tie it to a real world problem that you're facing. And I run into prospects all the time where they have their like AI transformation leader. Like, there's all these people at these companies now whose sole job is to go find AI tools and procure them. Right. Yeah. And I talk to these folks and, they're trying to do a deep dive into Hyperbound. I'm just like, wait, slow down. Like, I don't care about the product. Right. I want to know why you want to get something like Hyperbound. Like, what's the problem you're trying to solve? And typically they'll say something like, well, we want to improve sales efficiency across the board. I'm like, what do you mean by that?
Yeah,
right? Like,
yeah,
I'm like, what do you mean by sales efficiency? Right? There's just so many ways you could be improving sales efficiency. There's a million tools out there, to your point, right? And so I think a lot of like what we've been doing over the last year is like really cutting through all the noise and being very selective about who we work with. In fact, Jesse, we have 177% NRR right now with our customer base. And most people don't believe it. And the reason why is literally because we have been very selective about who we choose to work with. And we only work with people that actually have a big enough problem that's worth solving with Hyperbound.
Wow. No, I love that. I think that's a great response for anybody. It's very true that if you're sitting on the sidelines right now waiting for the like technology to catch up, you're going to be years behind your competitors that are implementing this stuff right now and putting this into their workflow.
Right.
Awesome. Well, tell us a little bit about how it works. I think listeners are probably curious. They hear a lot about AI and sales. And one of the things that I've heard from my community of fans and listeners is like, where do I even get started? Is it Claude? Is it ChatGPT? Do I go buy a tool? Should I just use the tools that come with my, sales enablement platform or my CRM system? Maybe give us your unique pitch in the market. Tell us about what makes Hyperbound different and unique.
Absolutely. I mean, in the vein of talking about the problem, right, before I even explain the product, I mean, I'll tell you the problem, right? The main reason why people come to us. To put it in a nutshell, man, what it is like, imagine you're a large enterprise company and you have like 1,000 salespeople across the globe, right? And you just launched a new product or you just launched a new feature, or maybe you're hiring a brand new set of reps, right? How do you get 1,000 people to change the way they speak about the product? Right? How do you get 1,000 people to handle an objection that they've been handling a certain way for like years and tell them like, hey, no, this is how you're going to do it from now on.
Yeah.
How do you do that at scale? Right. And essentially that's the problem we're solving with Hyperbound, right? Once you get to a certain scale with an org, with a sales org, there's so much tribal knowledge that's locked away in these sales orgs, right? And anyone new that enters, you got to figure out, first of all, how do I find that tribal knowledge and transfer it to that rep? But also, like, when you have enterprise sellers who have been there for so long, how do you change their attitude towards positioning a product a certain way and the like, right? And so that's the whole idea behind Hyperbound, is you don't need manpower to do that anymore. Because the status quo is, let's get all 300 of our managers in a single room, give them a PowerPoint presentation, and hope they teach it to their reps. It just doesn't work. And believe it or not, most reps, they forget 90% of what they've been taught in about a month after learning it. Right? There's like zero reinforcement today in the current status quo. And so our whole product is about how do we reinforce those behaviors and give reps a place where they can practice safely with our AI bots. So what do we do at the end of the day is we're an AI role play and coaching platform. So we have AI bots that will pretend to be the prospect, and you can do cold calls with the bots. You can do discovery calls with the bots. You can do negotiations, right? Any type of role play you can imagine and a customer facing conversation, we can simulate on Hyperbound. And it allows you to practice all these difficult scenarios that you might run into. It helps you practice your objection handling, right? And it's like having like a gym membership, right? Where you go and just train yourself and get better each day. And I think where we're headed is it's not just a gym membership, but it's a personal trainer for you, right? Customized for you. And that's the future of this technology right now.
So let's use an example here. That one area that I could always use coaching on. I've been doing sales for a long time, but because I sell to enterprise, the amount of like pricing negotiation calls that I have are just not, I don't get to do that every day. I get to do it every few weeks, maybe at best.
Right.
Because it just takes that long to build the pipe to then get to that point where you're negotiating your proposal. How would I, as an enterprise seller, implement something like this? Would it be, I could open up a Zoom and it would be a, make-believe prospect, not a make-believe, but an AI, persona would be in there saying, hey, I'm with procurement at Walmart and your pricing is way too high. We need you to come down by 50%. Is that am I getting it right? Or is that kind of how it works?
Yeah. So that is, one of the use cases, right? Where maybe you're in an active deal cycle, you're about to talk with procurement and you just want to practice that negotiation. Right, you can go into Hyperbound, build a digital twin of that person. And it takes about 3 to 5 minutes to build one of these bots, by the way. So you can just go into the platform, build one, and just practice on it before the real call. And it all happens inside the Hyperbound platform. And you can imagine over time, it's also learning what you're doing well, what you're not doing so well. And it gives you feedback and personalized training as you use the product more and more. So, in fact, this reminds me of a story. We actually had an AE a couple months ago who had a big call with the C-suite that was scheduled like in about 2 hours from when he reached out to us. And So he went on to Hyperbound, built a digital twin of that C-suite leader on Hyperbound, practiced with it, and then went into the real call and aced it.
Nice.
And he came back to us right after and he was like, guys, if I hadn't built that bot, I would have literally crashed and burned on that call.
Yeah.
Right. And he was like dead serious. He was so happy that he built the bot on Hyperbound. And I think that's a testament to the product, right? And the problem. Because for us, like that's exactly how I felt when I was using Hyperbound to get better as a seller in the early days. It was the same feeling of like, damn, I'm so glad I practiced those objections because I would have been screwed, you know?
So let's say I'm in a deal cycle with Wall. Let's just keep using Walmart as an example. Big enterprise opportunity, maybe millions of dollars on the table in ARR. And yeah, let's say I've got a big presentation coming up, a readout on our business case or something like that. How do I program Hyperbound to understand, situationally everything that's happened so far in that deal, who the personas are, what they care about, what their pain points are, data around their numbers? Because I know usually part of the business case delivery would be trying to understand what the upside is for them, what the ROI would be on an investment in our SaaS. Tell me about how that would look.
Yeah. So the nice part, Jesse, is that it's actually really easy to build one of these agents on Hyperbound. It takes as little as 3 to 5 minutes. Yeah. And it's the same process that you would take to explain to, a friend that you want to role play with, or if you want to role play with your manager and you just quickly explain to your manager, imagine you're just sitting with them. You're like, hey, like, here's a situation. Like, could you role play this with me? Right. Yeah. The same amount of time it takes for you to explain that to your manager is the same amount of time it takes to build a bot on Hyperbound. And once you publish it, it takes 30 seconds to publish and you're good to go. You can jump on a role play right away.
So does it take data from my CRM or from my email chains with the team at Walmart? Would it take all those inputs in as
yeah? So we do have those integrations, but they're optional, and you don't need those integrations for the platform to work. Most people will actually just go in and just describe the scenario.
Oh, cool.
Right,
okay.
Just by hand. It's like, hey, here's what I'm running into. Here's what happened so far, and you don't even need to give it much detail. Like our AI already. It's seen like 2 million hours of sales calls already. So it already knows like what a typical sales cycle, is like. You just need to give it some high level details about what the situation is, and it will do a pretty good job of extrapolating from there.
Can I input or tune it to personalities as well? So every time I'm in an enterprise deal cycle, there's always like that. It's not always the CTO, but let's just say, there's some technical persona or someone who's just a detractor. They're an asshole. Can I tell, Hyperbound, hey, by the way, this persona is going to hit me with every ridiculous question and they're going to try to derail what I'm saying. Yeah. Can it do that as well?
That's actually what we're known for. So
okay, cool.
if you go onto our website and just, hyperbound.ai, there's a free demo that's available on our website. And there's like 10 free bots that are available there. You'll find that those are some of the most asshole-ish bots you'll ever run into on the internet. They're very rude. And, we have dials right in the platform where you can dial it up or dial it down. And what most of our clients will do is they'll start with the easy version and they'll work their way up to the hard version. And, in other words, we have like sassy bots, we have rude bots, we have less rude bots, kind bots, bots that ask a lot of questions, bots that are way more guarded. Right. So these are all dials in the platform that you can set up to change the personality.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. Because what I've found, now many years working in enterprise sales and doing group sales with lots of stakeholders is you're going to have some champions. You're going to have people that are like indifferent, but then you're also going to have like these detractors, and sometimes they're quiet. Sometimes they're not quiet. And that's the nuance of what we do is you're trying to bring together all these people into this project. And you have to factor for all these different wild cards because you have no idea if in the middle, and I've had it happen more times than I care to admit, you're in the middle of a talk track and, some persona is like, but what about this? And, you're totally glossing over that. And so I love that you can actually put that into a training environment. That way you can learn how to pivot really quickly or stop and address the concern or find sort of your flow. Cause that is always the most, nerve-wracking part of delivering a presentation, whether that's a demo, a discovery call, a pricing proposal call is always that like, you have no idea how someone could react to this. And that unknown is always what is in the back of your mind as a seller. Cause you're like, how do I even train for this? And you really no amount of role playing with your manager. There's just not enough hours in the day.
It just
There's not
doesn't.
enough. Yeah, you can't
It's
do it.
awkward. It's
Yeah.
awkward. There's, nobody wants to spend that time with their manager. Their manager's busy,
Yeah.
right? And then also there's the buyer's perspective as well. Like, the way your manager role plays with you today might not be the same as another day, right? It changes. Or they might like if your manager doesn't like you, right? They may role play with you differently than they might with another rep on your team.
So true.
And so the nice part about AI is it doesn't care if you're a top performer. It doesn't care if you're a bottom performer. It doesn't care if you're a nice person or not a nice person. It just scores you, right? It's not judging you. And I think I've found personally that I take feedback so much better from the AI. And I think our customers share the same insight as well, as their reps are so like, you don't need any compliment sandwiches anymore. That's not even a thing, right? Let the AI roast you as much as possible. Like it's not personal. It's just AI,
Can that be tuned? Can I have the feedback from Hyperbound be really brutal and savage, or I can make it, shit sandwich where there's a little bit of good stuff in there?
Yeah. Yeah. The feedback is, is everything, right? Like it can be super customizable. People, that's one lever, right? Like how savage it is. But also people will tune it according to their sales methodology, or if they have a certain script that they want their reps to follow, or if there's certain talking points in the product or certain ways an objection should be handled, all kinds of different things that you can tune the feedback for.
Yeah, just stepping back, one of the things I hear most from other sales players, the folks in the community, is especially post-pandemic, it's felt like coaching in sales has just experienced this sort of black box moment where it because we're all remote now. I know I grew up in office. My first several years in my career were sitting in an office, and you do get, real-time feedback when you're making calls, you're on a meeting, you have managers that are listening, or they're able to join more, they're more agile. They can jump into a call, they can listen to a cold call, etc. And with the way we work now, that's just not the case. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I've heard from my audience is, how do I get coaching? And I think that's why there's been this rise in a lot of independent coaches, myself included. I do coaching for reps, but there's this huge increase in that service because managers can't really scale themselves that way. To your point, managers hold biases. They have limited hours that they can actually spend coaching. And so this is a really cool way to kind of get that on-demand, flawless feedback or unobjective feedback back to you on your sales process and style and those sorts of things. I think you're really hitting at the right time because again, the biggest complaint I hear is like, I can't ever get time on my manager's calendar. When I do,
and the stats show it, man. I mean, like we found that, literally the stats show that 5% of managers actually coach right now. I think I might have said that. I meant managers spend 5% of their time coaching right now. And, 60% of managers will actually admit to that as well, if you ask. Right. Yeah. But then again, there's also research that shows that coaching does actually impact win rates. In fact, it can impact win rates by as much as 27% when it's actually done. Yep. Right. So, this is not like, crazy black box stuff. This is like all proven out. The data shows it, but I think people just feel like coaching is one of those things where it's like a long-term game, right? It's not going to solve your problems overnight.
Yeah.
But, you can't solve everything overnight. That's not how it works. And so we're trying to always educate the market on the importance of upskilling people. It's not just, you can't just fire someone, bring in someone new and expect everything to be fixed.
Yeah. Yeah. What are some use cases for new hires? Because that's another thing that I'm well aware of is you're coming into a new role. Sure. You go through like your sales training and enablement, your sales leader, maybe an enablement person goes through like how to speak to the product and how to position it and how to do your processes and things like that. What are some ways that your customers are using it to scale up their brand new hire reps?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. Like the new hire use case is actually one of the most obvious use cases of this technology, right? Like if you imagine, especially if it's a complex product, like one of our customers is Monday.com, right? Yeah. They have hundreds of reps that they're onboarding every year, and their product, they have 50 different product lines, right? And if I'm a rep coming in, it's daunting. right? Like I have to not only learn how each of these products work, but I need to be able to understand the entire competitive landscape. I need to understand all the different objections. And then also Monday.com basically sells to every possible persona,
Right.
right? It's not like one persona and that's it.
Yep.
So, it's as a rep at an org like that, it can be very difficult to onboard quickly. But with a tool like Hyperbound, you can be sitting in your bedroom at 2 a.m. just, getting a bunch of reps out and practicing every product and going through this on your own. And a lot of people don't realize like it's all repetition, right? That's what sales is all about. It's just, that's why it takes a rep 3 months to ramp because, they need enough conversations to feel confident. In fact, we found that it takes nearly 400 conversations for a rep to actually feel confident on the phones.
Wow.
Now, to get that many conversations, like imagine, especially if you're cold calling, how long would it take?
A long time. Yeah.
A long time. But on Hyperbound, you can do that in a week, max 2 weeks.
What do you find for your customer base? Is it, typically, is this aimed at more experienced sellers, enterprise level folks, strat reps, or is this also pretty good for SDRs or early career folks that are just getting into their first AE role?
Yeah, so both actually is the answer. We sell to, SDRs, we sell to AEs, we sell to post sales teams. The way we think about it is anyone that's customer facing in the revenue org, we sell to, right?
Okay.
So that includes like solutions engineers, solutions consultants, right? Anyone that's customer facing. And then in terms of tenure, absolutely, like the younger reps are always the first to jump into Hyperbound, right? But even on the enterprise seller side, right, the more tenured reps, we found that especially when there's a lot of change happening in an org, they're always one of the first ones to get on Hyperbound as well, right? Imagine for example, we have a client we're signing on right now. They have 200 different products that they sell. Every product is getting a completely new refresh, right? Just because of they're ingesting AI into all of them. And so they have sellers that have been at the company for nearly 15, 20 years that, are used to a certain way of selling. And now they need to relearn everything that they had been doing over the last 15 years. And they have to learn what's new in the product, what are the new objections, who are the new competitors. And so, top sellers, they want to improve. They want to upskill themselves. And, they're the first ones to jump into Hyperbound.
Awesome. Tell us what's on the roadmap, what's coming up in terms of, new features, new capabilities within the platform that folks can look forward to.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. Yeah, the roadmap, I get asked about this all the time. And man, it is a long roadmap, I will say. We have a lot coming. I would say, one of the things I'm most excited about personally is our hiring product. So there's a lot of clients that actually use Hyperbound for hiring today, but I would say it's still in the early stages, right? So imagine for those of you that know how engineers get hired, there's a coding test that you have to take, right? And maybe there's multiple coding tests before you even meet the hiring manager, right? So you can imagine Hyperbound can also send sales assessments to candidates, right? So if I'm a company like LinkedIn, who just signed on as a customer recently, right? LinkedIn interviews thousands of people every year for, every role, right? So especially with sales, there's only so much you can encapsulate in a resume, right? Sure, your top performer, everyone puts that there and over, that they hit their numbers or exceeded their numbers. So how do you actually cut through the noise and find someone that's actually able to have a solid conversation? That's where you can send out these mock role plays and use this as a benchmark.
Yeah, at one point in my career, I led an inside sales team, and we hired. We probably interviewed 300 people, and we hired of that 300 somewhere between 35 and 40 reps in about a 6-month span. It was a wild role where my entire day was spent just interviewing people. And gosh, I wish I would have had something like this, just because
this would make it much easier.
Yeah, we had some kind of, canned email or sales exercise that people would go through, but this would be so cool to see how they actually handle a real-ish scenario, right? With a prospect. That is a great use case.
Yeah. I mean, we use this internally for our own sales team. The latest AE we just hired in March, he had to go through some pretty intense mock role plays on Hyperbound. And I've rejected people that have gone through every stage of the process and just didn't, meet the bar on the role play. Right. And so it's like, I think it's a really good test. It's like, okay, great. Like, you have a great resume, you talk, you speak well. Let's actually see if you can put the skills to test.
Yeah. Well, undoubtedly someone out there listening right now is wanting to get connected to you or your team and get this rolled out for their organization. What is the best way for someone to get in touch with you or your sales team?
Yeah, the best way to get in touch with me is, honestly, it's founders@hyperbound.ai. You can just email that, and both my co-founder and I will be happy to chat anytime. If you want to try out one of our bots, if you go to hyperbound.ai, you can actually try out one of our free bots on the website. It's really fun. It's free to use. You can do unlimited role plays on it as well. And, it's interesting. The hiring product just reminded me, there's another thing that we've been seeing more and more these days. If you're looking for a job and you want to show your hiring manager that you have the skills to do well at the job, go do a role play with one of our Hyperbound bots and send them the link to the role play. We've had people do that all the time. In fact, candidates reach out to us and do exactly that. They'll say, hey, here's a role play I did. Check it out if you don't believe that I can cold call.
No way.
Yeah.
Hold on. I want to recap that, because a big part of the coaching that I do is helping folks prepare for their interviews to find the right role. And I have a whole framework that I use, which is putting together an action plan. But I think that would be such a cool addition to, not only presenting an action plan of what you plan to do in your first 90 days in the role, but then actually showing, because one of the biggest things I've heard from sales leaders is, and we all know this, sellers can show up to an interview, and if you're a sweet talker, you can talk all about your metrics and your achievements and your quota attainment and all that stuff. But it's really hard to prove with a candidate that they can actually do what they're saying that they can do, and that they're not, that they weren't just lucky or they weren't just making up metrics, right? This is a way to put the proof in the pudding. And I love that. That's actually an incredible idea for anyone out there. And it's a super competitive market. So there's no better way to stand out in the stack of candidates than to, put something like this together that shows you're the real deal.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, that's another one. If you're a rep out there and you're looking for a job, just go to hyperbound.ai and, show off some of your skills. It works really well.
Well, awesome, man. This has been a pleasure meeting with you and learning more about your tech. Anything you care to leave with sales players, words of wisdom, advice on selling, advice on AI, anything at all?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know about advice, but I will say this, before you go out there and find the right tool for you, critically think about the order of operations, first of all, right? What are you trying to solve and what needs to be in place for your motion to work, right? For example, a really simple example is this. We get people all the time that come in and say, hey, we need to improve our cold call conversion rates, right? And the first thing I ask them is, what is your connect rate? Because if it's anything less than 4%, then coaching is not your problem.
Yeah.
You got to go get better phone numbers.
That's
right?
a good point.
So there's an order of operations, right? And I think people are really quick to think hey, this is my problem and I'm just going to go get it. But hey, no, step back for a second and think critically about, what do you actually need to succeed? And once you give your best shot at that and it's not working, then go find the right tool for the job. But yeah, I would say the order of operations is super important. I personally think that a lot of people try to skip the line and try to get to the end goal too quickly.
That's so good. That's so true too. It's easy to try to it's easy to try to dive into something when you haven't fully ingested or fully understood what the gap is. And so rather than going out and trying to stick technology to solve the problem, first, look inward and figure out hey, what is it specifically that we're lacking here? And then, move in that same progression. And like you said, order of operations, I think was a great way to put it.
Absolutely.
Well, awesome, man. Thanks for coming on. I'll make sure to post in the show notes a link to check out Hyperbound's products and, demo environment for sellers to use. And yeah, thanks again for coming on. This is great.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, Jesse. Appreciate it.